Welcome to a rainy Western Front. This is Gamer here, Gamer 1745 here with Strategic Command World War I, the Ludendorff Offensive DLC. All right, we're going to continue this here, and yes, it is rainy, so it will be slowing up our advances. I don't know if there'll be enough to save Paris for them. They both attack. That means they can't dig in if they move up, but he can dig in if he moves up, and he has enough action points to both move up and dig in. Probably rotate around. Yeah, that's good. Right, so Aberville is completely completely surrounded now. Dig in this time. We can push next turn. Yeah, that might be a good one. Now here. Are they entrenched? No, they're not. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap these guys out and then entrench these guys. That's why they were able to get so heavily battered last turn. Can't move, but that should be solid there. So they're having the squeeze put on them. We're going to move these guys up and guess right. No, they wouldn't be able to withdraw. Next turn, you might be able to attack and withdraw. Alright, 10 shots. Well, the only thing they can shoot at here is this guy. Okay, yeah, they're all in fact just wanted to check that. Yep, I think best to use the rain to maximum reinforce. Are they in France? No, they're not. Okay, so they're defended against any counterattacks. Not that they're going to come, at least in any overwhelming strength, I think. Now, out here. Okay. Right, now here is where we're thinking of attacking. So far it looks incredibly bad. We are running out of time for this scenario, so we are going to push now, even in the rain. We don't have air support, obviously, with the rain. We're getting better odds. I think with the rain we can't get this top full strength one down all the way down there, so I want to occupy it with the hay wagon that right there. Okay, there we go. I think we can hit this, take this out. Okay, so we've got that national objective here. It's going to come down to that. And since we can, I normally don't do this, but We're getting ready for a Paris offensive. We will overstrengthen him. Like I was worried about before, moving out a little too far here to keep the supply lines open. We definitely want that. We want that rail line fully open as well. So we can see here, we have this line coming down through Paris now. We've got this line in through here. We got this line in through here. And yeah, I know it's, don't know how much it's all still on this one line, but coming down, supporting down through this way for reinforcements. It wouldn't be bad to open up this path down and through here. But it's not a huge objective if it's not done easily, as it were. But we might just be able to do it really easily. Okay. And then, okay, that'll take all of our movement points, so we don't quite want to do that. So our action points, because we need the action of digging in as well as advancing. Yeah, that looks like a worthwhile attack. Well, move close to this, we get bombarded. Well, a lot of extra guns, but I think we can push right here, right now. I'm not going to push here. I'm not going to push here because I really want to take France, and I don't want to have. I don't know how much I'm going to continue to push here. I'm definitely pushing somewhat here, but just I don't want France to collapse purely from national morale collapse. I want to take Paris before the end of the game. If I can. I mean, we've got one of 4 of the hexes. We need these 3 more to do this. Okay, that will hurt us a little bit, maybe. Yeah. Okay, well that limits their. They really can't get any closer this turn. I don't want to do that for the moment. Just wanted to make sure I moved up. Oh, well. Good. Suffers attrition losses, okay. Falls as German forces manage progressive infantry warfare level 4. Decisive war winning victory, German decisive winning victory. Wow, okay. Is this the end? I guess this is the end here. Well, okay. I guess that is it. By taking this hex here, one of the Paris ones, and doing enough other things. So wow, this is the end of the series, I guess. Niagara was just asking me, how many more episodes do you think it'll be? I'm going, I don't know. You know, I was actually thinking we were going to get most of the way into December. I think it is like the end of the year is roughly where, but we've taken, here, yeah, we're here. We're done. That was one of the major objectives. There were several other objectives that we could do to say that we've won. And get a marginal victory, meaning not having a decisive victory. This is a decisive victory. So we've got one of these 4. I thought we needed to get all 4. I was ready to push them in. We can see here what the allies look like. Well, they're moving some stuff up here. That's Not terribly well organized, especially seeing as how you could have some stuff here. I don't know if they're thinking that they did push here the turn before last, thinking they might reconnect the pocket. I don't know. There are more HQ units, it seems. Probably not actually more HQ units, but then anything else left. That was losing supply. Okay, it's just showing us. I wonder if it's going to show me their supply too. But yeah, they're outside of supply down here. Supply might catch up to them eventually, but we have a lot of what ifs in the world to look at. Oh, I never even did. I was planning on taking this guy out and maybe even that guy out last turn. What if Germany had won in World War One? Well, I think there's almost zero chance of what game Hearts of Iron 4 mod, and I guess there's a Hearts of Iron 2 mod, Kaiserreich, which is I call it the weird and wacky world of Kaiserreich. You know, is the whole mod is based on the idea that Germany wins World War One. But how Germany wins World War One, if they did, would matter. Including how the Allies win World War One matters. You have this, I guess myth is the right term, this myth of the stab in the back myth, the myth that the German army gets stabbed in the back by the government. It's more and more put onto Jews as time goes on, but it's not just a question or thought put towards that the Jews stabbed Germany in the back, especially at the start. It's the socialists, it's just generally the government stabbing the army in the back when the army hadn't lost yet. That's incredibly wrong. It's scapegoating. The army had lost the war. The army clearly had lost the war. But it might not look like it to either the average soldier or even average officer, and definitely could also look like that to the average population, because the average soldier and the average member of the population gets fed with a lot of propaganda in wartime. Okay. Yeah, I mean this is clearly, this whole pocket area. If the map, I mean, there should be supply sources here because this isn't really cutting this off yet. Now push a little bit further, free up all of these guys, the Germans here, push down this way. That turns this into a pocket, even if they're still holding out here. That here could have turned into a pocket very easily. I mean, I could have, a couple of horsey units here, and that would technically be a pocket. I could, push him to here and a couple more units down here and push out either way here along this river. Boom, another pocket. That's an analysis. But back to my overall theme. The average German, again, soldier, civilian, was definitely aware of the economic strains. And it's not just, how much tax money is going to the government war effort. No, it's also how much food you have available. It's more than just, what people often point to as economic, profit, that kind of thing. No, some TikTok videos from some know-nothing college graduate or college attendee or whatever. Just don't let inflation happen. Just make sure inflation not happen. Just print more money. Just don't let inflation happen. I mean, I hope to hell she wasn't an economics major, but who knows? She very well may be in these modern day times. If you print up billions of dollars, then, oh, hey, I don't need to go to work. I'll just go buy food at McDonald's. Well, who's at, if I have billions of dollars, who's at McDonald's to work? They're going to start paying their employees tens of billions of dollars to work at McDonald's. And my billions of dollars, it just inflates. I know probably everybody here understands these things, but God, people don't. I mean, large numbers of people don't understand this stuff. So, the economics of Germany was very bad. Germans understood this. But Germans also saw victories. Hell, the whole Eastern Front was basically victorious. And that's what sort of the Ludendorff offensive is predicated on, is you no longer need to send ammunition in, war active amount. Yeah, sure, every, soldier occupying the East needs some bullets for his gun, and the artillery units that are still there, just because, hey, there's whites, there's reds, there's separatist nationalists around that have guns. You got the Czech Legion. Yeah, they're moving east, but eventually they're coming west. But, they're moving east and doing just about everything once the Russian Empire collapses. So, yeah, you need artillery units, maybe not heavy siege artillery units, but you need artillery units in the east. And, yeah, to the point of maybe not full artillery divisions like this, and this may be more and more defined as siege artillery within this game, but definitely divisional artillery. And sure, they're going to be firing a few rounds just in training, or, hey, there's some people over there, we don't want them to bother us too much, so we'll fire a couple of rounds at them. Whatever, I'm sure it's sort of a wild east, if you will. Sort of take the Wild West idea. Sort of a wild east going on. And they're trying to occupy Ukraine, whether that was going to, there's, before World War I starts, there's, extremist German nationalists that are thinking along the lines of Hitler, maybe not with all of the, venom. I mean, sure, there's a few that are like, Hitler. Hitler is not the start of his viewpoints. But there are definitely, I was going to say well-respected, no, well-known voices within the German society that were strong nationalists that would love to, I don't think they were thinking even them in the terms of like owning Paris, but yeah, moving the borders into parts of Belgium, move the borders more into France, and, definitely move borders into the east. Though the German Empire, the Kaiserreich, was very friendly to the Polish during the war and set up sort of a puppet government, sort of an autonomous zone, if you will, for Poles. They weren't trying to erase the Polish identity. I don't know where the different factions within the government envisioned the borders of Poland being, but hell, the flat plain, I don't know if they were like, hey, shift them a few hundred miles east or west or north or south or whatever, but yeah. So, yeah, but there was no longer this, feed the machine guns daily, feed the artillery daily need for munitions going east. And you were able to free up so many divisions, and all of the new weaponry could go to the Western Front. Yeah, you were still sending some down to Italy, still sending some stuff down to Turkey to keep Turkey in the fight. But it allowed a Ludendorff offensive. Now, I will very much say that I use some gamey tactics that won't work against the human. I do hope to whether it's the Ludendorff offensive or the World War One game, or base game. Maybe Old Crow, if you're still watching the series and I know you want to play with me, maybe we'll get together and do a play by email campaign. Now that this is done, I wanted to get at least this done. I still have the other playthrough that still haven't finished, but we may do a multiplayer. And some of the gamey tactic that I use to win this, especially if you haven't been watching, sort of the idea of leave a hole like there, and then the AI keeps sending in units, and I keep killing it efficiently. Where humans would redraw effective front line or more effective front lines. So I don't take what I did here as sort of proof that Ludendorff, had he just run his campaign better, somehow would have won the. I don't take that at all with this game. But it has been fun. So, Germany victorious in the East, still holding tremendous amounts of territory, at least as the German people saw it in the West, when Germany asks for an armistice and starts negotiating for one and accept one on the 11th month, November, on the 11th day, at the 11th hour, I believe the 11th minute, 11 is when the armistice comes into effect. It's agreed, I don't know how many days before, but it's agreed a few days before. And so the Germans see this as a betrayal, a stab in the back, in sort of two parts. One, at least this is my interpretation of it sitting here right now. One, as they accepted the idea of and it definitely had an armistice with the withdrawal from to the wars, to the borders, at least. Again, I don't know all the details of it. Sorry. At least to sort of withdrawals to pre-war borders, because the Germans immediately start withdrawing and the Allies push forward, very quickly. They don't. It's not like, oh well, we're going to then. And the second part is the acceptance of the Versailles Treaty without negotiating a better thing, as if the German army was capable of restarting the war at that point and successfully defending the Reich, if you will. I don't know what that gets you. What the hell does that get you? But this myth grows up that the political leadership, and it's very, very telling that none of the generals are willing to go to the Versailles Treaty to do any of the signing. They refuse. The Kaiser, of course, and then none of the royal family goes there to sign on behalf of the Kaiser Reich, the German Reich, the German Empire. And no military officials are there, entirely civilian. And so this grows up. The myth within Germany is, hey, the conquest game was only lost ultimately because betrayal, stab in the back, whatever, by our government. When Germany just couldn't function. It was collapsing. This Ludendorff offensive, in essence, was why it was done. My understanding very much is the Americans are coming, the Americans are coming, the Americans are coming. We've got to push before the Americans are really fully here, because America was gearing up for 1919 spring, early summer, whatever you want to call it, depending on what month it was, massive offensive against there. Very much in this, because this never happens in the idea of that. I think there's like 3-4 divisions. Someone could correct me wrong of how many American divisions actually sort of get into the front lines. I'm not talking in France, but actually getting into the front lines. It's not that big, and we've taken out a bunch, all of these, but they were gearing up for this for 1990. And there were tremendous numbers of American soldiers in France, again, training up, getting ready. There were also tremendous numbers of American soldiers in the pipeline to go to Europe. And this is, which I've been informed also hits Germany very much, is when you have the influenza pandemic breaking out and hitting some of these camps. I know in America, because there's lots and lots of men, the way they're billeted together closely in, bunkhouses with, beds on top of each other, chow lines, people eating. That just sweeps through the barrack, and sergeants and officers aren't like, oh, Private Pyle is feeling a little sick today. Let's send him something for me. No, get out there and dig some ditches or march further or whatnot. Suck it up, move it through it. And that just, of course, they don't realize it at first, and it just plummets through. And after they're starting to figure this stuff out, I presume they start taking it seriously and reacting to it and trying to do something about it. That doesn't mean they're effective. Their measures are effective, but that does hit the American. Lousy motorcycle, a noisy motorcycle. It's lousy. I get right outside my window. And he's trying to somehow drive it, and it's stalled out once he put it in the gear and tried to move it. I have no idea with engines and motorcycles. He's doing the kickstand, or not the kickstand, the kickstart. I think he's flooded it. I used to have a mini bike at my granddad's ranch when I was a kid. That's about as far as I got into motorcycles. But, sorry for that interlude. And so that also hits Germany too. But they were very much preparing for a massive American offensive to come in and crush into Germany. Now, the German people and the German army doesn't see this because it never happens. And so with that, you have, hey, if we just didn't have our training politicians behind us, we would have been able to win the war. Really? No. And continuing the war to defend Germany, what the hell does that get you other than more people dead? The armistice was the right thing to do. Oh, by 1916, at least, meaning both sides should realize that it's time for an armistice and a negotiated settlement. Whether that means, like in paradox terms, fight peace, antebellum peace, peace before what it was before the war, or adjustments that may be painful to one side, it can happen. But had Germany been victorious, had this had happened, had in November of 1918, had German forces entered Paris, this section still may be defending, and the French government puts up the white flag. The British government has seen at least two major pockets of its troops wiped out. And they, I don't know how they would be being fed, how well they would be being fed. But a lot of those people, of course, would have been interred in prisoner of war camps. But as units, they would be wiped out. And so Britain is not a mass mobilization army country. Even if you take all of its colonies, both Anglo-based colonies, we'll call them things like Australia, Canada, as well as African or Indian or other primary ethnic groups, they're not a manpower, math-capable empire. I mean, it may seem that way to, let's take a reasonably major country, say Italy at the time, but No, it really isn't, because its empire is based on trade and manufacturing, but trade very heavily. And so it needs its very large merchant marine and navy, which takes a lot of manpower, not just to, sail around in boats, but to logistically support it onshore, to, deal with manufacturing. And you got to realize, I think basically all of these ships are running on coal, the British use, including, ships, whether they're bringing supplies, from Britain to the front lines, or bringing supplies to Britain from the Empire or America or wherever else. All that needs to be, people need to be digging coal out of mines. It takes that kind of, and I know that happens in other countries too, but not only, Germany, World War One, needs to mine massive amounts of coal, absolutely. But most of the coal is not going to ship operations. And yes, I do know small boats and submarines are running on like diesel oil or whatever, but the ships are mostly running on coal. And so figure Britain, for all of its soldiers and its activities, is doing just as much coal, to make weapons and ammunition and whatnot. But they're also doing a massive navy where, yes, Germany has a large navy that sits in port. Germany does not have a large merchant marine. It exists, but it's not large. The British is the largest merchant marine at the time of World War One. By the time of the end of World War II, America has surpassed it in both merchant marine and standard naval stuff. But only during World War II does America surpass the merchant marine and the navy. So when you take that into account, no, Britain is not a manpower soldier intensive empire that's able to field huge numbers of legions over with it's not a Rome. What really surprised in the ancient world, I know I'm talking on a lot of different subjects, sorry, I hope it's interesting. Most countries, if you will, whatever you want to call them, city states, whatever, in the ancient world, had a core of professional soldiers. I'm going to cough here. A core of professional soldiers. And when they were defeated, the war's sort of over. Because, there might be older professional soldiers, that are well out of date, shall we say, and young trainees and other people willing to man the city's walls and keep us from being attacked, and they would. But they're not going to field another army to go out and fight. So you negotiate a surrender terms, whatever it is, a bunch of silver, trade of land, trade of slaves. I don't know. You do a 3 days of pillaging of our city, and then you get to go home. You can have anything you can carry away with you, kind of rules or whatever it might be. And so you have that generally, but Rome was, we just had our field army destroyed. Next, new field army. Oh, that's destroyed. Next, this is still when it's, before it becomes a grand empire, when it's growing large in Italy. Rome is able to do this. Britain is not able to do this. I can also look back to the Peninsular War, how Britain is worried before Wellington takes over and even after Wellington takes over the army in the peninsula, how worried the politicians are at home, because they know that if that army is destroyed, whether it's in prison camps or everybody killed or whatever, but if that army is destroyed, Britain can't raise another one. No, they can continue raising a few more battalions here and there, and they can continue to feed in, normal combat casualties and keep that up. They can't keep raising armies like Napoleon and his levy en masse, and how that spreads to some of the other continental armies. They got one good professional army, because yes, they still need troops sitting out in India. They still need troops in the West Indies, the Caribbean. They still need these various other units. And so if you even point out, well, they could pull all these, they give up their entire empire and create a second professional army. Yes, they could. But what's the point? Let's just negotiate a peace terms, get our our army back home, have 5 years of peace, and then have round 2 or round 3 or whatever it would be. But they can't keep. And yes, after 10 years, obviously most of the soldiers are retiring, dying, whatever, and you're getting new. So you can do this again, every 20 years, easy for Britain, but not this. So this is Britain's army, and we can see some stuff up here. Isn't all gone, but it isn't. If you do this to Britain's army, they're not just able to raise another one and fling it in here. So it's America coming. America's going to push. America had only done anything like this once before when it fought itself during the Civil War. And that should have given Europe more pause about American intervention, but it doesn't in either the First or the Second World Wars. So it would have been better for the German army to be defeated, I think, and push back into Germany for overall world conditions than the victory that we had, because the victory that we had led to the rise of the Nazis in multiple ways. One, again, the German populace believing the army wasn't defeated. They were just, sort of outlasted and betrayed by their political leaders, because they could have held on for another 6 months or another 4 or 6 months on the food they had, and they were getting ready to grow more food in Ukraine and in the East, and they were going to be feeding that, and there's resources there, and yeah. But they aren't going to be crushing into Paris. They aren't going to be making any major offensive operations. They were done. It just would have extended the war another 6 months to 2 years. It wouldn't have changed who's victorious, in my opinion, had the German army fought on. No, it was time for the politicians. And yes, there was Frederick the Great. I mean, he isn't the creator. I think it was like his father or grandfather, sort of more the creator of Prussia as a bit of a state. But Frederick the Great is really what creates Prussia. It's sort of an army with a state. Okay. And that's sort of explicit that Frederick the Great was not only the leader of Prussia, he was the main leader of the army. In the medieval world, in the Dark Ages, you were king because you led army, because you could protect your land. Governance was a secondary aspect, because often you didn't have a whole lot to govern, or you couldn't govern a whole lot because, and this is turning into a long lecture, I hope it's interesting. The king would make a progress from here to here to here to over to here, and dispensing justice as he sort of moved along. People come and petition him. Oh, we've got this conflict over the border between two, boundaries of land ownership or something, and he would move around because that's all they could do. They didn't have people to write up documentations and lawyers to send it. I mean, they existed, but not in any fundamental systematic way. You couldn't govern very much territory, people, thing. So you had to move around. So governance was limited. Well, of course, in the modern world, the military is super important, but governance is its whole own thing, which we are seeing what's going on around in the world and how it affects things. So people who govern, whether you're a military dictator or you're a democratically elected prime minister, and lose his prime ministership at any moment simply by a no confidence vote in your parliament, especially some of these parliaments where you don't have a single party majority in either even if it is sort of, it's kind of a coalition party, whether formally or informally, that's capable of falling apart at any given moment. Whether either type, and things in between. those that govern need to understand the limitation of the military. You know, hey, yeah, we're safe from attack because we have nuclear missiles. We can, nuke anything. Are you going to nuke one of your own cities? If it's in rebellion, or if it's been infiltrated by foreign infiltrators of some sort, all carrying AK-47s, are you going to nuke your own city? What's the limitations of your military power? And then make decisions based upon that. And of course, you need to have generals that will tell you the truth in all aspects. What they think they can do, what they currently have done, where their troops are, how many troops they have, how many bullets they have, they need to tell you the truth. That, again, sort of reminds me, the Portuguese government or army or whatever did an analysis at some point during World War II, and sort of in the fairly early-ish days, and figured they had, I think it was like 4 days of fighting. I'd have to look that up, but it's less than 10 days of fighting at full sort of military fighting of ammo for their country. That's all they had. Yeah, we can defend our country for like 4 days. President Salazar, 4 days. Then we're out of bullets. We can't shoot anymore. That's it. Now, I don't know, after that report comes out, do they start buying or manufacturing more bullets? I don't know. I really don't. But they did that analysis, and that comes out that, yeah, we can defend our country for 4, not that we can successfully defend our country for 4 days, but that we can shoot, whether it's artillery pieces or machine guns or rifles, for 4 days. Now, we could be at war for 5 weeks if nobody's attacking us and we're staring over the border at Spain, and Spain declared war on us and we're defending it and we're looking through binoculars. Yeah, we're all ready. We got 4 days of battle that we can defend our country at expected operational use levels of ammunition for the army to be engaged, or whatever comes out instead. And so politicians need to know these things. And so somebody like Salazar, who was a nationalist, a pragmatist, not a fascist, wrote an anti-Hitler book before anybody is starting to, because he was a bit of an authoritarian nationalist. Yes, I will grant that. Before anybody, he's a nationalist. He actually writes an anti-Hitler book and publishes it. His name is definitely on the cover, and my understanding is he actively wrote it. Now, I don't know if he had ghostwriters and editors and whatnot. I don't, but he basically is the author of it, to my understanding. And which, of course, has ramifications going on. This is before World War II starts. He writes an anti-Hitler book. He is not the Nazi, and he deals with fascism, most assuredly. The Nuova State is sort of his thing, which is not fascism, but it has fascist elements, but it's sort of at very most, it's sort of fascist light, but it's more nationalism, shall we say, more pragmatism than an ideological nationalism of some sort. But yeah, he needs to know for his negotiation stance, what is he willing to give in, and go, oh yeah, he can only give in so much until he has to go to war, because otherwise you're losing your country anyways. But what, for negotiations, what can he give into? Politicians need to know this, and this is getting back to, stab in the back and whatnot. I don't know German politics enough in pre and war period politics. Mostly I've studied the Weimar Republic on. But the Kaiser seems to be the key. Yes, other prime ministers, premiers, whatever they're called in Germany at the time, have a lot of power. And of course, Bismarck is the famous one, and Lum likes to praise him, I know. But the Kaiser the Kaiser and the political organization could have brought an end to the war much sooner. I'm just sitting here thinking, sort of, what was he being told? 1914. I get that. I get the whole thing. I get your Archduke is assassinated by Serbians. That's how you view it, and that's how I view it. Yeah, they were using Bosnian terrorists or whatever to throw the grenades and shoot the Browning pistols, but assassinated by Serbians. So Austria goes to war with Serbia. Russia says it'll stand by Serbia. And Russia and France have a defense agreement. And Germany will support its ally, Austria. So that means we're going to go to war with Russia and France. And they decide to go through Belgium. Yes, I will grant a lot of people, I don't know, I think it's likely, but I am sure, I am absolutely sure, now this may be just more belief than any evidence, but I am sure the British people are not as willing to take as much pain and suffering as they do in World War I had Germany not invaded Belgium. I will maybe grant you that the British would have come in anyways eventually, even if Germany doesn't invade Belgium. But the British people, through the propaganda, the very real propaganda, and the very real idea of, oh, Germany can just decide to go through your country if it wants to attack a third party. I mean, that's sort of ridiculous, of course. With no other idea that Belgium was not like going, we're going to stand by France. No, hey, just leave us alone, guys. Have your war, leave us alone. I mean, that's all Belgium was. And hey, we'll maybe even trade with both of you, But no, they weren't a party to it, and they get invaded. And they weren't doing anything. It wasn't like more recent people's memory, the War on Terror, where, rightly or wrongly, the U.S. have attacked elements within countries. Sometimes I would go very much rightly, because we've identified terrorist cells and the local country is either unwilling or unable to deal with it. And and some of these countries are rather underdeveloped, at least in regions of them. And so they have, what correctly or incorrectly identified by the Americans as terrorist organizations, that are there and are willing to or planning on attacking Western targets, likely American, and so they want to attack them. Okay, so the U.S. goes bombs someplace out in the Yemeni desert, or does a strike even in the center of the capital, because the country may not have the power structure, the capability to take these groups out. Okay, and you can go, what did Yemen ever do to America? Well, maybe nothing. Maybe, I'm not saying yes or no on that. Maybe nothing, but they're allowing a group that is doing, terroristic type war against the West to operate within them. Belgium's doing nothing like that. Belgium is willing to, we'll stay out of it if that's what both sides want, no trade, no whatever. No, they just get invaded. Okay. To me, that's sort of like, oh yeah, we're going to go to war with Islamic terrorists. Oh, but Chile is over here, and we're going to take Chile out. Are there any Islamic terrorists in Chile? No. There's nobody even believes in Islam anywhere in the country of Chile. But we're just going to take it out because it's in the way somehow. I don't know. Pick that country. It's just in the way. It's not Islamic. Has no Islamic terrorists in there. No, they don't even allow people in or something. I'm not saying of course they do, but we're just taking it out because it's in the way. Just purely, it's in the way. And so, yeah, that gets the British people popping mad. Okay. And then the propaganda works very well from the British government, talking about real German atrocities and maybe magnifying them, but they're real atrocities. Notice I'm saying there are real German atrocities in Belgium. I don't quite know how many, and I don't know, and I'm sure, because there's enough documented proof from both sides, that some of them happened, they're not in dispute. But and they get worse as time goes on. But just how bad were the atrocities, I don't know, compared to, inflation by propaganda. But they definitely existed. They were definitely there. That is not, in my mind, a question. It's just, the scale of them. Maybe in my mind a question, but I definitely don't want to make it out that there wasn't one. This is not a German apologist video, nor is this Britain did wrong video for what it did. But so, yeah, Britain comes in, and like I say, the British people probably would not have been willing to suffer so much pain for Germany not attack Belgium, but they probably would have maybe come in anyways. And it could have been, hey, the British fleet is, sailing about in the ocean, stopping trade with Germany, and there's, 10 British divisions of volunteers fighting alongside the French in the trenches, had they not gone into Belgium, just over in this part of the territory, if it was a limited front or something like that, and just sort of something like that going. I totally get the start of the war. I totally get the idea that the push to Paris gets bogged down. And then I totally get the idea of 1915. We're going to organize ourselves up and have a good big offensive and take it. I sort of get 1916. We've learned from that before. We're still doing good, and it's taken us 1915 to ramp up, because it really was. Ramp up our armaments and munitions. Armaments, again, are weapons. Munitions are the things that come out of the weapons. The bullets. Production up, ramped all that up to big time scales, and we're still increasing it. Both sides are still increasing the production scales, through much of the war. And so 1916, but by the time you get to 1916, and you haven't done too many strategic major victories on either side. The West hasn't pushed them out of Belgium, and Germany hasn't taken Paris. And all you've maybe done is expand it to, other fronts and, the Ottoman Empire or something. It's time for the political leadership to assess that maybe we need to talk about an armistice. And it could be an armistice that sits down and we're going to, stop shooting at each other. And it's going to be based on our current entrenchment lines. And then we're going to negotiate for 3 months. Give a deadline. Because otherwise you have endless negotiations, and then you have just the idea, they get to keep all their gains because it's been 5 years and they're still negotiating. And which gives both sides, of course, the chance, which they were sort of doing anyways, building up their equipment, then have another bash at each other. But if that, after 3 months, if the negotiations don't come to pass and you have another bash at each other, and that doesn't significantly change things, it's time for political leadership to realize that you have to negotiate. Germany can't get to hold on to everything. Whatever. But, okay, I know I'm going along on this, but political leaders need to understand this stuff. Okay, so had Germany done a mild victory in 1916, enough to make the British and the French sign a peace, that might have been good for the world. Might have. But it needs to be a mild one, because otherwise, instead of you having Hitler rising, you have a fiery Frenchman or somebody. Because we see somebody like Mussolini rising in Italy, you see somebody else rising in France. If there's large amounts of Germany or large amounts of France become occupied by Germans or whatever, you just have the opposite reaction. Whether they're from the left or the radical right or whatever you want to call it, I don't know, you have the opposite reaction. With the victory that was had, I think the best solution, and I go back, and I know I'm influenced by my education, some of the statements, but some of the stuff, the analysis was, I forget I think it was. It's either the penalties on Germany are too harsh or not harsh enough. And you can talk that there's a lot of harsh penalties on Germany. What do you mean Germany is not harsh enough? It's not that we have to take half of the bread away from all living Germans, or we've got to ban them from ever having any army ever again, or or whatever. You either leave the Kaiser in power, you set up the borders, mostly, you can adjust the borders maybe like they did, but you don't necessarily occupy the Ruhr and, other areas deeper into Germany, but, go to what becomes modern day German borders sort of along here. It's a little bit further in. Either you set something like that and you leave the Kaiser in power, or you basically break up Germany. You get rid of the German Empire, like they do with Austria. You may leave, the Kaiser may become the king of Prussia, then you have the king of Bavaria, then you have the prince of this. Now they may have and instead of, I don't know who pushed for getting rid of the Kaiser, maybe it was just everybody, but they're definitely coming out of, I think, France and America, maybe more so than Britain, this idea that democracy, we just had democratic this, democratic that, voting, whatever. The people won't choose to ever go to war. The people won't choose to keep fighting forever. Well, the French did. They chose to keep fighting forever. So, on that, no, democracies can go to war and fight. And they can become uniparty systems, in essence, by one party controlling all major elements of governance. And though there may be opposition parties in existence, they may be just, fractured and minor. And so you, in essence, have majority tyranny. You can have that in a democracy. Maybe that's sort of what was happening in Italy with its fascist government, because there is still other conservative monarchist politicians, I believe, in their parliament, though they purged all the left-wing ones. Eventually, Hitler purges everything but National Socialist parties in Germany. The party is the state in Germany, like the Soviet Union. Early on, it's not that way, but eventually it becomes that. I think almost entirely. I'd have to, but the party is the state, party apparatus. I don't think eventually there's any other parties going on in Germany. So, because I know in the 30s there still are, but eventually it really pushes that way. Hitler's takeover is gradual. It really is. Before he comes to power as the chancellor, but even after he comes to power as the chancellor, before he's the Führer, before Hindenburg dies, even after Hindenburg dies, he's slowly gaining more and more power. People don't realize this about Nazi Germany. It isn't 1933, whatever date in January he becomes chancellor. It is the Hitler dictatorship. Nope, not at that point. I mean, you have Nazis marching in the street, yep, but it's not the Hitler dictatorship. There's still President Hindenburg. He, still has the Vice Chancellor von Papen of the DV, whatever. But yeah, it's a gradual thing. Pay attention, modern people, about things like that happening in your modern world, but that's another issue. So yeah, they push too much for the democracy format, shall we say, the democratic format in Germany, as being a way to solve the problem. But really, it would be breaking up the German Empire. And, so Bavaria had the king. Now, does that mean you install and you enforce a monarchistical dictatorship? You got a monarchy in Britain. Is Britain a monarchy? Yes. Is Britain a democratic government? Yes. They're both. It's both. The same moment, but it's not a monarchistical dictatorship. I know dictatorships and monarchies have sort of different definitions, but you know what I'm saying. So it's not that we're trying to put, I think, Ludwig or whoever might have been, or Rupert or whoever might have been the king of Bavaria at the time. I don't know. Ludwig the Mad, who's already died. I don't know. But, you very well may set up a democratic government under it, that maybe keep out the hardcore red, but allow in the socialists, and set up some various regional government, breaking up Germany, like you break up Austro-Hungarian Empire, break up Germany. That would have been the solution. Because once you do that, and then you let them have, and you keep your boot on them a bit, but you let them have 10 or 20 years of that, and then the political leaderships within those countries won't want to give it up, because they're going to go from being prime minister of Bavaria to being agricultural minister of the German Empire. No, they like being prime minister or whatever. Or all the other political leaders, they want a chance to be prime minister, not just a chance at being agricultural minister or something of some greater empire. And are the Bavarian, if the Bavarians get in charge, are they going to force every German to only drink beer and not drink any wine or schnapps, or vice versa, or something, whatever it might be, the different regional differences. I still have trouble trying to figure out the regional differences between Norwegians and Swedes. What's really different about them. Yeah, I know they live on two sides of the mountain and they speak maybe slightly different languages, but they don't. Now, I get the difference between Italians and Scandinavians. I get the difference. Trust me, you want to shut an Italian up, sort of tie his hands. I get some of that. There are fundamental cultural differences. They're both in the European culture group, sure, certainly, but they're different. And so, but the difference is different. And there are different cultural groups within Germany, and especially back then, a lot more maybe than today. But it's break Germany up. And so Hitler becomes the dictator of Bavaria, like he tried with his Bavarian putsch, maybe. And so that's limited. And when he marches into the Rhineland, or whatever you call that, the Confederation of the Rhine, or whatever more over here, the local forces fight against him and drive him back or something. Yeah, that's what I mean by harsher on Germany, not twice the amount of reparations or more American troops occupying it for 20 years or something inside of Germany, daily, being a sort of occupational police, military, or whatever. Okay, so I know this is going super long. I hadn't planned on this, so I didn't have any notes or anything. So yeah, this kind of piece probably would not have been good, because France would be humiliated, and you have the sort of, okay, another short rant. World War I breaks the ancien regime, the ancient regime, however you want to pronounce that. Now, it's already sort of in a way gone with the French Revolution, but the sort of reviving of it, the somewhat modernization of it, the bringing it back of it, because you have, Napoleon III for a while is Emperor of the French, but you also have Louis the whatevers, Louis the 18th, Louis the 19th, or I don't know, there's several of them. At times with the French monarchy, that then, because Napoleon III, or he who becomes it, for a while does a revolt and create the Second Republic of France, and then eventually from there he creates the Second Empire. So yeah, they're going back and forth, kicking the king in and out in France, and Belgium is sort of set up in the sort of German German, not micro-state, but German principality. It's a kingdom of Belgium, but it's sort of set up in that kind of a model, if you will, because it used to be the Spanish Netherlands, and then it was the Austrian Netherlands after they sort of lost the Northern Netherlands. But this was the Austrian Netherlands, and then the French come in and take it over and sort of directly put it into French control. And then when the British come back in, realizing that you can't leave France too powerful, form Belgium as an independent country. Belgium as an independent idea of a country is sort of a British formulation. It's quite artificial, actually. You have two cultures sitting in there. You have Catholic Dutchmen, if you will, and other Frenchmen, basically the Walloonians. Not Frenchmen that aren't Frenchmen or something. I don't know. Again, I don't know how culturally different they are from other Frenchmen, but yeah, whatever. So you have the breakdown of that regime because that belief, and you have Victor Emmanuel still in power and as king of Italy and whatnot. Yes, but when Garibaldi forms his revolution and kicks out foreigners and unites Italy, he puts a king in charge above a government. But you have the failure of these idea of elites running society, that they, whether it's based upon blood, and blood is sort of a simple way of saying DNA, the idea of two smart people getting together having sex is more likely to have a smart child. And so you do that for many generations, you're going to have breeds smarter. You can see breeding in dogs, and obviously dog breeds, will disappear if you stop having humans, because they'll have sex and become generic dog again. But so they're in a way artificial. And you definitely have dog breeds that are much smarter than other dog breeds as a breed, and not just individually, but it does vary, and whatnot. So the idea, whether it's genetics or education or a mix of genetics and education, that creates an upper class that can effectively rule. And it's not just World War I, but World War I really sort of shows it to everybody blatantly that fails. Okay. And we also see the failure of true democracy, which the failure of democracy is showing Hitler, because Hitler rises through democratic means. Okay. He really does not stage a coup. Even Mussolini, who sort of stages the coup, but that never happened. It's the threat of the coup that sort of let them into power, but they're still to get rid of longer story. Won't go into there, but yeah. I mean, again, remember the Fascist Grand Council deposes Mussolini, and there was always a king above Mussolini in Italy. So however much Mussolini was a dictator, and he was something of a dictator. I'm not saying he wasn't. He was still deposed by government means, and all the while he was dictating, he still had a king and a conservative, I don't know his name, but a conservative party. Not that they're super pro-monarchy, but they're pro-conservative Italian values of that time. Don't confuse them with like American conservatives. It's the old world values. But it shows that the failures of democracy, the Weimar collapse, and the Hitler taking over is through democratic means. That show the weakness of democracy, just pure voting. And you're going to have better results. The idea is not that democracies can't work, but the idea that you're going to have better results than the elites running the country. What's the answer? The answer is tough. Whatever the answer is, it's tough to figure out. But it breaks down it brings on the final collapse of the acceptance by the general masses of the ancient regimes, the ancient regimes. You can see it so clearly in Tsarist Russia. That's the clearest. But you see it collapse because of World War I. Now it's already happening because of more and more people are able to read and get education, newspapers, communications, radios. All that's going on at the time and changing the world. So it is not just World War I. If World War I was the only thing, it wouldn't have collapsed the old regimes. And it's not just a particular party or faction in charge of governments, but the whole idea of that is collapse. And so that's what happens, is the old way of doing things is collapse. People's trust, people's faith, and I'm using that term, faith, in the old system, including the old system of religion, that God's going to give us the right leaders to make the best decisions. So we trust the church, and who the church says the king is, we trust all that. That didn't work out. Now, going against the church and God or whatever, Didn't work out either for the Soviet Union. I wouldn't call Stalinism working out well or Maoism working out well. So the opposite isn't true either. But that's sort of, again, why the Soviet Union is sort of the old order, which the church, whether Protestant or Catholic, but more Catholic or Orthodox, state churches, if you will, would be a good term for that. The trust in all that evaporates. The trust in the Church of England really starts evaporating because of World War I. Gets a bit of revivals that people need, the support systems. It doesn't necessarily, I would say, break down the actual belief in God. It's more the belief in church that's broken down in a lot of ways, though belief in God still, because people's view of God, whether they believe it exists or not, does change. So that's what collapses. The trust in the system collapses. Yeah, that's what collapses. So it's a long sort of rant. I'm going to have to market this. This is the end of this series, obviously. Can't even continue to play to crush Paris. They've surrendered. It's over. We're done. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far and you haven't already, please subscribe, like the videos, comments on any of my long rambling rants, including corrections. I'm sure, I don't know what it is right at this moment, but I'm sure something is wrong in my rants. But, yeah. See you next time for more historical gaming videos.